All right. So I'm ready to get into this by me saying three, two, and one. Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy tonight. Or really, it's more appropriate to say this morning, all the way down under in Australia, we are joined by Tony Telfer. As I understand it, I can do whatever I want as long as you'll enjoy it. So, of course, who is Tony Telfer? I understand that you have quite the tale and you do a ton of stuff, man. So dig into the whole origin story and who you are and everything along the way. Go.
All right, mate. Yeah, good morning or good evening, no matter where you are around the world. And you're almost right, actually, Aaron, because it is actually don't do anything that I wouldn't enjoy. That's my favourite saying. Look, as Aaron said, my name is Tony Telfer. I'm vision impaired and have been since I was 18 months old. I'm now 61. 61 going on about 20, I think. But anyway, predominantly I've been involved most of my life in blind sports. Was fortunate enough to go to Paralympics back in Seoul in '88. I've played goalball since 1980, and I think I officially retired in about 2015. But apart from that, I have done I ran my own disability sports network for a while where we broadcast live sporting events from all over the world, and got to do a lot of travelling and things like that. Now I'm living down in God's country, so I'm about, for people who don't know, well, I guess most people will know where Sydney is. I'm about 4 hours southwest of Sydney in a town of about 7,000 people. I'm fortunate enough I work from home, as well as also am now heavily involved in the blind golf scene in Australia, and also do work for the local community radio station and do a few shows a week down there. So that's it in a nutshell, Aaron. So I'll let you fire away with what you want to inquire about, and then trust me, happy to answer questions about absolutely anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really, really an excellent start. Absolutely. So yeah, you definitely do a lot. The one thing that really stands out to me is this whole concept of you going to the Paralympics and then the Blind Sports Network. So why don't you dig into some of those experiences and talk about the Paralympics? And then why don't you talk more in depth about Blind Sports Network and all the different reporting and activities that have been done around the world over the years?
Yeah, more than happy to. Look, I was very fortunate. I got involved in goalball many years ago when I lived in Victoria, and started playing and represented my state on a number of occasions. Was fortunate to go to the World Championships back in 1986 in Roermond, in Holland, and that was an eye opener. And of course, back in those days, for people who know goalball, back in those days, you actually had to wear your eye shades before you actually went into the hall. You couldn't see anything at all, whereas nowadays you go in without the shades on. But back then you had to have the shades on. It certainly was nowhere near the status of what the game is held in now. We certainly didn't get the support back then. Every event that we attended was always self-funded. I mean, back, I guess, from 1980 through to the early 90s, at least, all of my holidays were taken up by going to play goalball somewhere or another, because obviously we had to hold down a job at the same time to be able to afford to go and do that. But probably the biggest thrill of my life was, without doubt, well, probably the second, because I don't think my wife would be too happy for me to say that it was not the biggest thrill when I actually married her. But I digress. In relation to, I mean, Paralympics was something that you'd always dreamed about, because obviously being of sporting mindedness and coming from a family of 10, where all of my brothers played football, my sisters played netball, And when I say football, I'm referring to AFL football, not soccer football or American football or whatever you know. So it was like, yeah, and I never had the side to participate in that. No matter how hard I tried, it just didn't work. So it was nice to get involved in a sport which was invented for people with vision impairment. It is the only sport today was invented solely for the purpose of vision impaired people who can compete on an even playing field with their sighted friends, with other blind people from around the world. I mean, and that to me is a huge plus. But going back to the Paralympics, I mean, one of the biggest things I'll always remember is saying, being a sports person, you watch the Olympics and you always wanted to say, what would it be like to walk into an opening ceremony, to march in behind, in my case, the Australian flag, representing your country in a mainstream event. Certainly the highlight of my life back then, and loved every minute of it. And I think back then there was 12 men's teams competing. Australia being relatively new into the games, we didn't have the greatest success on court, but certainly learned a lot. And it probably, one of the major things was getting accustomed to cultures from other countries, because not having done a lot of overseas travel at that time. I mean, I went to Richmond, as I said, but going to be able to go over to Seoul and participate in the events, but also get to know the people off court as well, and get to know what drove them, the reasons that they took up the sport. In the majority of the cases, it was the same reason. They wanted to play regardless of what it was, whether it was soccer or, no matter what the sport was, they were able to then compete on an even keel with everybody. There was no, I guess discrimination is the wrong word, but there was no restriction for them. That's probably a better way to put it, to participate on an even playing level. Now, as I said, I went through and I played goal ball for many, many years, both at state level. I moved into state and then represented my now state, New South Wales. And trust me, I'm a New South Welshman through and through now. I think I've been up here for almost 30 years. So I've been in Sydney for a long time, or in New South Wales for a long time. I started to think about the coverage of goal ball in particular, because one of the things that always fascinated me was that when Paralympics, for example, was starting to get some mainstream coverage, they'd focus on disabilities that you could see. For example, you could see if somebody was missing an arm. You could see if somebody was missing a leg, whether they had to, and to me, they didn't focus on people who, by all appearances, have got nothing wrong with them. And that, to me, was a point in mind. I thought, well, what can we do, or what can I do to turn around and bring this up to, so that people who want to know, because it's like anything, any sport, you go to an event, your family want to know how you're participating, how you're going, what it's like, and the rest of it. So I sat down with a couple of mates, Troy King and Graham Coulton initially, who have both represented Australia in goalball previously. And we were looking at options to be able to bring goalball into the home. We thought, okay, then how can we bring this in so that people can watch the major goalball tournaments around the world? And hence Disability Sports Network was born. Initially, we were doing regular shows live to air through the web, where we'd go through obviously results of tournaments from around the world, any blind sport. It didn't matter what it was. We were going through that, and we were focusing on, okay, now the next step is to bring pictures and words, because one of the things which I find most frustrating, and I still find it to this day, is that you can sit down and watch a mainstream sport on TV and people will forget to let you know what's happening on the field. They'll start talking about other things that have happened, how this player came into the game and the rest of it. Meanwhile, the game's going on, but you're not being able to follow the action. So one of the criteria that we stated right from the start was, okay, even if we have got pictures, we want a full audio description of the game, which is one of the key things. Now, at that stage, there was a guy out of America called Bill Teal who was doing gold ball tournaments, and Bill is a legend as far as I'm concerned. He started bringing the sport to everybody. We then basically took it to another level from where Bill was, and to the point where we started locally, where we set up our cameras at the national championships in Australia, and I went from playing to coaching, and I coached New Zealand as well. So I've done every gambit of the gold ball realm, so to speak. But we started bringing pictures and full coverage. So for those people that don't know, they would have heard it obviously for regular listeners and who know gold ball. I used the ABC method, the so-and-so's and they throw a cross court to see or whatever it was. But we made sure that we used the names of the people, who was defending it, who they passed it to, and not just left blank airspace, because there's nothing more frustrating if a game's going on, and particularly if you've got no side at all. You can hear the ball, but after a while, you're going to lose track of which end the ball's at unless you're getting told this here. Now, that's where it all started. From there, it was very fortunate that a couple of people from overseas, a great mate of mine, Ahmed Zibadavi from Canada. Now, we went to do the Grand Slam tournament in Canada on a number of occasions. And as I said, they were tremendously supportive of everything we did, always kept us updated with everything. As I said, we did the Grand Slam in Canada a few times. We did the Australian national titles, I think, for about 10 years in a row. And it's still going on today, not through DSN at the moment. They're doing it through, I think, their own streaming devices now, because, DSN at the moment is in a break, so to speak, because it just got too much. And with me moving to the country, it made it a lot more difficult to get things done, because it just logistically it was more difficult. But when, as I said, I've also been to Finland on a number of occasions to broadcast the European Gold Ball League from over there. As I said, I've been to Canada. I've been and done the US Nationals on a number of occasions. I think from a broadcasting point of view, the highlight was doing the World Championships in Sweden, where we were looked after like kings, and nothing was too much trouble. And from there, the broadcast of specifically gold ball has grown tremendously, and to the point where now, gold ball is seen on mainstream TV in the last few Paralympics, and to me that is a massive boost forward and a huge move forward for blind sport in general. And just in relation to that, as I said, and this came from a couple of mates sitting around having a couple of beers saying, well, how can we bring this great sport to the greater part of the world? And through that, it started. So to anybody out there, if you've got ideas or you've got thoughts and things like that, one thing that didn't stop us in any respect whatsoever was the lack of vision that we had. And both vision as in what we wanted to do, but also lack of sight. That didn't stop us whatsoever. And I think that's one of to be honest, it's one of my bugbears, because I can't, there's a couple of restrictions that people with vision impairment can't do, for example, drive and things like that. But I can't imagine anything else they can't do if people put their mind to it. And to me, that's where it all started. And the pleasing fact for me now is that, as obviously I'm an old bugger, but I can see the sport and the broadcasting of it moving forward, which to me is a huge plus. And it gives me a great deal of pride knowing that sitting down at the pub having a few beers, that it's grown to the level that it has now. Sorry, Aaron, did I catch you off guard then, mate?
Not at all. I was simply muted to help our listeners get the best audio. My end of it, the mic was muted there. Not at all. Yeah. No, that's really incredible. And for how about whether you're blind or not, or if you're one of our sighted listeners, let me bring in this person here. One of basically the South Africa office of Aaron's Opinion just sat down in the waiting room. You'll talk to him in a few minutes. But for those who don't know, why don't you kind of run down what is goalball? Maybe run down just the basics of to give people a good idea of the sport.
Well, apart from saying it's the greatest game in the world, and I'm extremely biased, I must admit. All right, so basically what goalball is, you have 6 players on a team, 3 on the court at any time. The sport is played on a volleyball court, and it's divided into 3-metre sectors. So 3 metres at each end is the team area for each team, and 3 people defend in that area. Okay, and basically form a triangle formation, 1 on each wing and a centre player. You then throw I think it's 1.5 kilo ball now. It was 2 kilograms when I first started. It's slightly larger than a basketball. It has bells in it. Of course, everybody on court is blindfolded. So no, there's no advantage for anybody, regardless of whether you're fully sighted or what category of sight you do have. Everybody's on an even keel, so you're all blindfolded. You throw the ball pretty much 10-pin bowling style, although now there's people who do discus throws, but the ball has to bounce in each sector to make it a legal ball. And the idea is you dive across the floor, like a goalkeeper style, to defend the ball. It's played in 2 12-minute halves with 3 timeouts per team.
Very
if
good.
The
Excellent.
ball goes over the sideline, so it's 9 meters wide, then it's scored out.
Right. And then when the ball goes into the goal or crosses the goal line, how does the point system work in goal ball?
Okay, it's just on a goal basis, so it's very similar to football or to soccer. Goes across the goal line, then it's 1 goal. And of course, there are own goals as well that are in it as well. So if you pass the ball, you'll see people pass from one wing to another wing. Well, they'll throw the ball and let it bounce a couple of times, so they're able to pick it up because the ball has a bell inside of it. So it does make noise, obviously.
Right. Very good. Yeah, I've played it once before. I'm not really an athletics person. I am a healthy person. I exercise and I have a healthy life, but I'm not athletic. But I think it's wonderful. Yeah, I think it's a great sport for anyone, really, blind people or not. It's very interactive. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay. Well, really cool. So when you were in Seoul in the Paralympics, apart from playing in the Paralympics for goalball, did you get to go out and experience Seoul or Korea, or did you have a really good, a really good bibimbap, a really good Korean meal, or what do you remember about that?
Look, we got to go out a lot over there, and the locals who looked after us were brilliant. I'm a big fan of kimchi, I must admit, which is basically fermented cabbage. And it's
Me
rather
too.
strong. Yeah, love kimchi. But also, we did get to go out a bit, and we used to go out, particularly when we finished, we'd go out and then once the competition was over, we went out and have a few drinks. And they have this drink and it's called soju. And
soju, yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I must admit, we indulged in that a little bit and had a lot of fun and everything like that. But I must tell you, after the event, we went out to a bar which we used to frequent on a pretty regular basis called the Twilight Zone. And one of the guys who was in our team, Kevin, had a thing for girl from the US called Donna at the time. And every time we went in there, the first song that was played was O'Donna. And every time. So it was like, and I think the last night we went in there in daylight, we found out why it was called the Twilight Zone, because we actually left in daylight the next morning. So it was, yeah. But if anybody's thinking about going to Korea, definitely go and do it. They're wonderful people, very hospitable. Um, and it took a little bit to get used to some of the customs. You'd go on the bus, for example. No one would get up and offer anybody else a seat, but what they would do was, if you were holding a bag, they'd hold the bag for you. So they'd take the bag and they'd hold the bag, so you didn't have to hold the bag whilst you're on the bus. So I thought, yeah, but lovely people. I'd go back tomorrow.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, super cool. Super, super cool. Yeah, I've never been there, but very, very good. I've been all over Europe, by the way, especially France, because I happen to be a French speaker, so I speak French. So I love going to France, and I love their food and culture and things like that. So yeah, have you played goalball in France?
No, I haven't been. I haven't been to play ball in France at all. I think the only places in Europe that I played um, in England and Germany, and also where Holland, or the Netherlands. I think they call it now. I don't know, but it was Holland then anyway. So they're the only ones. But I've played in the US and I've played in Canada before. Played in Finland, in Denmark. So I've played in a lot of places. But I must admit, so as far as traveling goes, I mean, I love Canada. Both myself and my wife Sarah, we love Canada. We've been to Canada on a number of occasions, and touch wood, all going well, I'll be going back again there next year. So, which I'm certainly looking forward to, because um, as I said, I've got some great mates in Canada, particularly in Vancouver, with, as mentioned, Ahmed Zibadavi before, but also, and these are people that I've met through the goalball community, and that's the beauty of it, because you meet them through sport, but they become your mates. I mean, and that's the big thing. I mean, there's Doug Ripley, who's probably one of Canada's greatest goalballers, along with Ahmed, and also Brendan Golan. So, I mean, I know people there in Canada, and as I said, I want to go back because I want to go back and have some poutine.
Sure, absolutely. That's all very interesting. All right. Well, that's good. And then at some point after that, I think you really got into blind golf, right?
Yeah, I started playing blind golf about 5 years ago. It was because when we moved to Young, um, there was not. I'd sort of taken myself out of blind sport, and we just play on a weekend that we played cricket and that. But it got to the stage where there was, as I said, it's 4 hours away. And for me to go up and play cricket, for example, on a Saturday, I'd have to leave my place at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't get back till 1 o'clock in the morning because of the trains. So I was looking for other sports, and I said, well, why don't you get involved in blind golf? I thought, okay, then why not? I'll give it a shot. So I started playing blind golf, and the only difference between blind golf and regular golf is that we use a caddy, obviously, to line us up and to also spot the ball. And the only other difference is that we are able to ground our club in a bunker, whereas normally you're not. So that's the only difference to regular golf. Started playing golf down here, participated in a couple of state championships, didn't do overly well. Met up with my caddy, Jeff, who now works with me all the time. We play in the local competition down here. But last year we went to the Queensland Blind Golf Open, and also was the Australian Stableford. And I was fortunate to win both events overall. So going again to Queensland in the next about 2 weeks' time to hopefully defend my championship, but also to get good results to qualify to get invites to the World Championships, which are in Canada next year. So it doesn't matter, as I said, no matter what your age is, get involved in some sport, be it blind golf, be it blind tennis, which is now a big thing that's starting up. I think they've got beat baseball, beat ball, or something like that. I haven't been in, don't know that much about that, I can tell you, but there's always sports that you can get into where, apart from anything else, win, lose, or draw, the biggest aspect of being involved in sport in general is the social effect that it has on you, because you meet so many different people from all over the world and from all over the country who are in a similar situation to you and have dealt with the issues that you've dealt with, or so you always tend to brainstorm about how you deal with different situations, um, because you've got to rely. And it's amazing how many times that you sit down and you speak and you think, oh, I'm doing this the best way there is, and then somebody will say, well, have you tried doing something this way here instead? And it makes all the difference in the world. So I mean, you get a lot of life experience by attending those events. But no, I'm a golf nut now. I think I've got about 3 sets of clubs at the moment. So, but it's a lot of fun, and I had to do something because I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. Particularly with, obviously, I work from home, as I said, so you put in your 10-hour days, and well, I work 10-hour days because I have a Wednesday off, and Wednesday is my golf day. And Wednesday's the golf day, but all of a sudden Saturday and Sunday have turned into my golf days as well. So, I mean, it's great because of the outlet you've got with the people at the club that you would never meet normally unless you participated in golf. And the thing is, you can play it with your mates, so it's, yeah, no, it's for me, in my latter years, it's one of the best things I've ever done, because it means I can still be competitive in a sporting sense, and still get out there and still set goals that you want to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. No, I never golfed. I never got into the sport, but my father, who's sighted, plays golf several times a week, and I think it's definitely a great thing because it gets you out of the house. You interact with people. You're outside. It's about positivity. And then it's a lot of fun. So, golf is pretty technical, though. I mean, if you only started 5 years ago, Tony, how did you learn the strategy, learn even how to swing the clubs? How did you learn that 5 years ago? It's not that easy.
I just took a few lessons in relation to it. Had some lessons. I'd swung a golf club before, and I've got enough sight where I could see how to swing a golf club. It's just a couple of the finer details. And we were fortunate down here that the golf pro at the time at the local club actually played on the PGA Senior Tour, so he knew a lot about golf, and I probably spent, had lessons weekly for over 12 months to get things right. And it's just a case of just honing. It's like anything, I guess. Practice, well, it's never going to be perfect in golf, but it certainly does. And it's like repetition. You get the swing exactly the same way each time, or you try to, and that's what the difference is. It's just a case of persistence. And the other thing is too, once I set my mind to doing something, then I'll make sure I do it to my full potential. Regardless of what it is, regardless whether it's work, leisure, sport. If I set my mind, for example, to play golf or to play goalball or whatever it is at the highest level, then I'll do everything I can to do it and to make it happen, regardless of the hours. But the thing is too, it's the enjoyment of it for me is everything. Now, I could go out tomorrow and have an absolute shocker at golf, but I'll still have a great day.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're very right. Yeah. Okay. And another really important thing for all of us blind people, for anyone really, is employment. So it sounds like you've also done a lot in the employment sector. So what can you talk for a bit about over your lifetime, your various employment experiences? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not a problem. Well, I was never a great one for school because when obviously things have changed a lot with the schooling side of things. Back when I was young, I mean, as I said, I left school, I think, in 1976. It might have been early 77. Didn't do much school, went through, it was in a solely a blind school at the time until I was about 11 or 12, and then left school when I was 14. So it would have been, yeah, 77 I left school and was fortunate enough to go into and apply for a job or an apprenticeship and became a qualified a saddle maker by trade, um, and worked at the Pioneer Settlement in Swan Hill. And as I said, with all of my jobs, I've been fortunate. I've been able to walk out of one job into another job. I've always left a job by choice in relation to it. But I was thinking about this last night because I knew that we were having a chat today. And one of the things that I've never done is when I've applied for a job initially, I've never mentioned the fact that I'm vision impaired because I've let them determine whether they think that there's somebody they want to interview for a position or not. I don't tell them beforehand because I don't. But particularly not so much nowadays, but particularly back in the early 80s, it was a case of, well, no, that you say, oh, I've got a vision impairment. No, that's sorry, we can't have that because it's not. Back then, there wasn't the assistance with technology or anything like that. So I never told anybody about my vision impairment. Now, I'm fortunate in the aspect that I've got enough sight where I can get away without telling them. Well, I was. Nowadays, I do use a cane. So it's a little bit different. But I always figure then if once you get to the interview stage, that's when you sell yourself. And I think that's going to be the biggest plus in everything. I'm a very positive person, but I've also got a lot of faith in my own ability, my own ability to achieve and to be able to do the role. I mean, I worked for the Melbourne Ambulance Service for 10 years and finished up working in the control room, obviously where you take over here it's 000 call, so the emergency call. So I was in the control room for 8 of the 10 years. And that's because of the fact that I knew that I could achieve that and also trust myself. And if you're having issues, don't be afraid to say, yell out and say, yeah, okay, all right, I've got issues with this. Then, because otherwise, if you don't, then better to ask and not make a major mistake than not ask. And then something happens in relation to it. But yeah, as I said, I worked for the ambulance service, then I went into the insurance industry. Now I've been in the insurance industry basically for the last close to 30 years in a number of positions of insurance and banking industry. So I worked for major car insurance and home insurance companies over here, worked for workers' compensation insurance. And the role that I'm currently doing, I work for health insurance, NIB Health Insurance over here. And out of all the companies that I've worked for, they are the most accepting of anybody with a disability, regardless of what the disability is. They will do anything to help. Now, I applied for the role initially, and when I applied for it, it was pretty much at the end of COVID. And at that time, I'd moved back to Young Perth because I went and worked in Sydney because I had to for a while during COVID or before COVID, and then came back to Young and worked from home. I then applied for a position with NIB. They asked me about coming into the office. I said, no, look, that's not going to be possible because they're based in Newcastle. And now Newcastle from where I am, you've got to go to Sydney and then it's an extra 2 hours from there. So it's basically 6 hours to Newcastle from where I live. I said, no, look, I can't do that. I said, I'm not prepared to relocate. They said, well, leave it with us. And it all comes down to the way you sell yourself because they contacted me back and said, oh, we'll just make you permanent work from home. as a regional, technically a regional office, my own regional office. Now, within the time that I was with, or have been with NIB, I started just in the regular call centre, taking calls about health insurance inquiries. I then went to a specialist team in dealing just with the hospital side of things. I then went into the complaints area and dealing with people who had their complaints and things like that, or any concerns. They'd come through to us and we'd have to deal with it. And now I work in the digital team where basically we just do digital chats. Now, the reason I bring up the digital chat is because at work I use JAWS, because obviously the screens, I've got large monitors, but the screens are certain things you just can't read. The company turned around and I mentioned this to them. They were prepared to pay for JAWS themselves as a company so that I could continue to work. So, I mean, as it was, I got it through another scheme here, so I can keep it once I leave the company. But they bent over backwards to assist in relation to it. As long as I've always found, as long as you're up front, once you've got the role, if things are getting difficult, you let the people know, then generally, provided you're doing a good job, and it doesn't matter whether you've got a site problem or whether you haven't, if you're not doing a good job, they're not going to keep you there. But if you're doing a good job, there's going to be opportunities there for you to obviously enhance your career moves within the company, but also they'll give you the support that is required. Look, one of my pet hates is I find it very, very frustrating. I don't know what it's like overseas, but certainly in Australia, with people saying, "Oh, I can't get a job; they won't give me an opportunity." I said, "Well, have you spoken to such as?" "Oh no, I've just gone through my employer, my vision impaired employment people." I said, "Why don't you get on the job sites and apply for jobs yourself?" "Oh no, I can't really do that because I've got to go." What's stopping people from doing that themselves? And in Australia, that's one of my biggest bugbears, is people don't take the chance and don't take initiative and go and apply for things themselves. And so, like, I've got an interview. Then if you need to go and deal with your disability support worker or your employment advisor, then you go and do it then. But get off your backside and take a chance, because the only way you're going to succeed, and it's a lot easier now than what it was when I first started looking for work. I'm going to show you there's a lot more technology out there now. People are a lot more open-minded then. The idea was, when I was growing up, you were told that, okay, as soon as you turn 16, you'll go and work in basically a sheltered workshop. You'll be getting, probably a quarter of the wage what anybody else would be getting for doing the same job. And my response to that was simply, well, no, that's not what's going to happen. I know what I want to do with my life. Granted, it hasn't turned out exactly the way I've planned, but career-wise, I'm as happy as the proverbial now, because the company's supportive. I've taken opportunities that have been given to me, ran with them, and to be honest, not let my size restriction hold me back at all. And that's what I think, certainly over here, people with vision impairment need to accept the fact that, yes, get up and take a chance. Yeah, if they say no, it may not always be because you're vision impaired. It may not be because of that. It may be because you're not suited for the role. You don't have the qualifications for the role. But it's not always going to be because you're vision impaired. But if you don't take that chance, you're never going to know.
You're so right. Yeah. And this is even here in the States, up over where I'm from, and certainly across the pond where South Africa is watching us right now. These issues of employment are huge issues in the blindness community. This is a major issue. So I'm pleased to hear your perspective, how it is there in Australia, but of course, you understand it's still a major issue, even in the United States. This whole employment thing, when to disclose a disability, how to disclose a disability. And then there are some people who, didn't and get a job because they admitted to being blind, and then there's other people who got a job because they lied about being blind. There's all sorts of different stories about that. Yeah, so it's a major thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, it certainly is, and you're right. I mean, there's different strokes for different folks, as they say, and look, I through obviously some of the groups I'm in, I actually tend to think it's a lot harder to get a role in the States than what it is in Australia if you're vision impaired. And that's just from reading posts and speaking to people who have had issues in regards to it. But you're right. When do you disclose it? When do you don't? I mean, as I said, I can only base it on my the way that I've done it, and that is purely and simply because I actually didn't have a choice. I mean, I was always told when I was growing up, just because you're blind, don't think you can't do this or don't think you can't do that. And that's the way that it's been for me. And look, the other thing is too, and I think this is one of the big things, is acceptance. And because there's so many people that I know, although they're vision impaired, don't accept it. Or when they do accept it, they think, I can't do anything now. My life's over. And there's a lot of walls that have to be broken down, and it's happening, but it's happening slowly. But I guess things like, if people are aware of situations and are aware of what they can do, and I mean, look, to be honest, if anyone ever wants to have a chat or have got any questions in more detail, then they can certainly contact me. I'm contactable on Facebook, or they can get in touch with you, Aaron, and you can just forward my details on to them, because it's different for different people all the time. It's a lot more difficult, I think, personally, acceptance-wise, certainly in Australia, I think in the employment field, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, but from a male to get a role as a vision impaired person than a female. And that's purely and simply because a lot of the guys I want to be able to go and do, for example, gardening and things like that outdoor. And it's still the attitude over here is that certainly in a lot of in a lot of places, not everywhere, but certainly in a lot, that if you're a male with a disability, you're not a full person. Now, I can't say for a female because obviously I'm not, but that is still a big thing that goes on here. I've got a lot of younger mates who say, yeah, it's easy for you to say this here, the way that you've done it, but nowadays it's a lot harder because I don't want to get a job in an office. I want to be a gardener or something like that. And it's obviously a lot harder for them. And a lot of it is because a lot of those particular roles are male dominated. But the aspect is that they look at it and say, well, okay, all right, you're a man, but you're vision impaired, so you wouldn't be able to do this here or do that there, and don't give them the opportunity to prove them wrong. So it's a tough situation to be in, to be honest. I'm glad I did it all then and don't have to do it all now. Because although you've got the technology now, I actually think in some aspects it's a lot harder now than what it was when I did it, because it was straightforward then. And also because I'm a very positive person. I don't ever see a glass half empty. A glass is always half full for me. But I can understand where people get where they get to when they continually get rejected for positions and things like that and find it harder and harder. And the other aspect of it is too, and I think this is something which when I certainly grew up was not a major deal, but I think the biggest thing is now too, along with it all, is the mental health issues that people just didn't acknowledge were around back in my early 20s and 30s, whereas now we know about it. We know the fact that you constantly get knocked back things, then your mental health takes a major beating, and that's an extremely hard hurdle to get over. So I mean, it's
yeah. You're hitting, as we say, up over up here in the States. You're hitting the nail on the head, as we say in the States.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. And I think the biggest issue with employment is that no two people view employment the same way. And so no two people will have the same experience. So it's not quite like goal ball or golf where you can explain, okay, Tony, what are the rules, right? With employment, it's a little bit more obscure. There's not quite a clean cut answer to every question, which I think is why it still is a major issue. The other thing that you and I share is, of course, a love for broadcasting and a love for radio. I've come to understand, as I was saying last night in the Blind Hangout group on Facebook, I don't really know much about you. Of course, I'm thrilled that we're now together here in the Aaron's Opinion family, obviously, but I don't know a whole lot about you. Yeah, I do know though that you do some sort of radio show, or you've even dabbled in podcasting yourself, right, Tony? Talk about that for a bit.
yeah. Look, I have. I mean, I've been involved in broadcasting in some way for a long time. Where back in when I was living in Melbourne, there was a network, and it was called 3RPH at the time, and it was radio for the print handicapped. Is what it was called, and what it was that they would have people come in, and for example, it was basically they'd read the newspaper for people who couldn't read it, and that so which was fine. We got involved in that and was doing some broadcasting, obviously not reading newspapers and things like that, but doing a sports show on there at the time. And we broadcast a couple of live cricket matches because the studios were right near where we played, so we put ourselves up on top of a caravan and broadcast there. And then, of course, I went into my disability days, but also we did regular podcasts for DSN. But I've always had I've got a huge love of music. I'm a huge, obviously, growing up in the 80s. 80s is a big music genre of mine, but I'm very much into country music. Now, when I moved down to Young is when I got really heavily involved. The local community radio station 2YYY, and I got involved and started doing some shows down there, not just music shows, a couple of times a week. And then I said, well, why aren't we doing anything on a Saturday morning? Because they have their breakfast shows during the week, but on a Saturday they weren't doing anything. So I said, well, all right, I'll do a breakfast show on a Saturday morning. I'll go from 6 until 8:30, and then I now start at 5:30. So I've done my show this morning, and all it is we go through, obviously, we play a lot of music, also obviously do our regular sponsors ads, and that's so because they obviously play they pay for their ads to be played, so we make sure we play those. We also go through Your Day with the Stars and on this day, and they could never be there are another people, and it's all voluntary. But at the moment now, I do my mystery bag breakfast show on a Saturday morning, 5:30 till 8:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, just as a quick plug. Also, every second Saturday night, I do a Saturday night music show, and tonight I've got another one on tonight at 6 till 10, which is the Aussie Barbecue this week. And of a Sunday afternoon between 5 and 7, because I'm an old softie, we do the Sunday Lounge show, and basically on that show there, it's basically sharing the love. So we play a lot of love songs and things like that. But a lot of the stuff that I generally play I've got into a couple of countdowns actually in recent weeks, but normally I play a lot of country music on my my breakfast show, and it's all modern country, a lot of Luke Combs, Tim McGraw, also Drake Milligan and people like that. So, and it's a whole lot of fun because it means I get to listen to music, play what I want, and I guess fulfill another ambition of mine, which is to have my own radio shows. I mean, and that's
Mm,
to me that's a huge thing, and love every minute of it.
me too. That's wonderful. Funny that you mentioned breakfast shows. And Latabo from South Africa. We'll put him on at the end of the hour, and Latabo can tell you all about this. It's interesting because our South Africa office of Aaron's Opinion has his own radio shows too. He does a show for several different online stations, and one of the focuses is a breakfast show. So this concept of a breakfast show, come over, have some good music, that's starting to gain in traction. I think that's really, really good. I'm sure. Let me phrase a very specific question. So you're from Australia, and
Yes.
I do not, and it's not because it's bad, but it's actually because it's good, and I try to be a respectful host. Although I think I'm kind of fibbing a little bit. I you know me, I get a little, you can tell that I'm a huge character. I'm not always politically correct. I'm just going to tell you up front, Aaron's opinion. It's not always normal. Okay, it's our opinions around the universe. I'm going to phrase the question this way, and you can either tell me over the air or probably we can connect one on one about this. You're from Australia. I don't want you to say who it is if you know who it is, but do you know of a very, very, very well known blind podcaster, radio talk show personality from New Zealand, not too far away from you? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I actually don't know who you're talking about.
That's funny. Okay, I'll tell you later who it was because
Okay.
I was thinking with all the things that you do in Australian radio, I'm shocked that you don't know who that is. When I name drop it
Look,
privately, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I probably will. I probably will when you name drop it privately because I spent a lot of time in New Zealand as well because I
Yeah.
was coach of the team over there, but I've also got lots of friends over there. So, and you're right, it's New Zealand is just like an extra state of Australia in
Well,
effect.
so for now for the record, number one, you're being recorded. Number two, Tony said that, not me. I had nothing to do with that. Okay. Anyway. So, but no, that's wonderful. Now, how does now in Australia? How do they handle the radios in Australia? And what I mean is, each country, as you know, has a different way of setting up their radio network. Sometimes they do terrestrial, other times online now, other times a combination between the two. It seems like your station in Australia, where you host your breakfast show, it seems like they have set it up so that there's a terrestrial line, and an online line, and an online side, and that's very special and very unusual because I could listen over the internet if I wanted. So could South Africa. So could the other person that's in here. But so how does all that work? Because it's very unusual and a great feature if they offer both online and terrestrial listening. Talk all about it.
Yeah, well, it is both. We do have both, obviously, because it's community radio. So obviously, local people can just pick it up on their regular radio, 92.3 FM, or obviously they can go in through the either the website to listen or go in through the app and obviously download 2YYY so they're able to access it whenever they want. And it's basically very simple the way that they've done it. They've obviously just got, and I'm not technical enough to realize it because even when I was working with DSN, our tech expert Sean Campbell who actually just lives down the road, and when I say down the road, it's 150k away, but that's just down the road when you live in the country. So, but they've set it up so it's just set up like a normal studio, and they've just combined the two. So because it's community radio, it has to be in the local area. But the beauty of it is that obviously through the web is predominantly where I get the majority of my listeners from. I mean, I've got regular listeners from all over the world that I hear from each morning when I do each Saturday morning or Saturday nights or Sunday afternoons when I do my shows. Obviously, I promote it through my Facebook page and also through Blind Hangout and also Blind Buddies and things like that. So I've got a lot of listeners who.
Wonderful. You're definitely going to get more downloads now. We in the Aaron's Opinion family, we love it. We love it, love it, love it. And there are so many people all over the world in our community at Aaron's Opinion who will love to find your information online. So definitely, when you type up your blurb, your paragraph that tells the audience, the about section, the little summary,
Yeah,
definitely include all of the website links for this radio station, and definitely include all of the plugs so that everybody can enjoy what you do, because we have a
yeah,
lot of listeners all over the world and they would love to tune in. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions about, well, what time is it for me? What time is it? I'm sure you'll get a lot more downloads, and all of that. Specifically though, it is good that we have UTC. The universal clock makes everything easier. So you can just say, tune in at such and such a time UTC on this day, and I would know when that is.
yeah.
But the time gaps all over the world are very severe, especially you being as far as you are. But I don't know. You're the guy that lives there. I don't know. I don't know how you deal with that, but that's you. You do you. But no, I've never been to Australia. You have a wonderful nation, absolutely wonderful, wonderful nation. Great food, wonderful people, absolutely. My father went there once on business. The only thing he remembers is that he was surprised that the plane landed. He thought they forgot to land. He wasn't sure what was going on there. The flight just goes on and on and on and on. Is one thing that
Yeah.
what Australia is always a long flight. It doesn't matter. The problem is it doesn't matter where you're starting from. If you go to Australia, it takes a long time. There's no short flight to Australia. Yeah.
No, but it's worth it when you get here.
Well, I certainly hope so.
It's the greatest country. Yeah, look, trust me, if anybody's coming out here, or Aaron, come over here and visit us. I mean, as I said, you're always welcome down in Young, because it's a great community. It's like anything. I mean, people. I love to travel. If I had my way, I'd just travel all the time. Unfortunately, I've got to pay the bill, so I've got to work. But one of the things is about Australia. There's something for everybody, whether you like, cities or whether you like countries or to get out and about. There's something for everybody here. And look, I'll tell you something. We were driving back from Cootamundra, which is about 40 minutes away the other day, probably around about 5:30, 5:45 at night. And Sarah's just turned around and said, "Oh, look over there." And as I said, as true as I'm sitting here, there's probably 50 or 60 kangaroos just sitting in the paddock eating.
Love
it.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
And but no, it's look, and I'm exceptionally biased. But I love Australia.
not just biased, but exceptionally. So it's another level of biasism.
Oh yeah,
it's
another level of bias.
not normal bias. You're on a normal bias. You're exceptionally. Wow, you're all the way to the exceptional level. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, as I say on my shows, I'm coming to you from God's country, and I believe that where I live is God's country, because it doesn't get much better than this.
I believe it. I believe it too, and I believe it. I believe that you believe it is what I believe. So yeah, no, that's wonderful. I'm a huge one of my fascinations in life, to which I have many bizarre interests, but I'm a huge reptile nerd. I love everything about snakes and blueies. I have a fascination with blueies. Yeah, do you have a lot of blueies that patrol your yard and eat dead carcasses?
No,
no blueies. No blueies.
No.
As in, you know what I'm talking about, is in the blue-tongued skink creature, the blue-tongued skinks.
Blue-tongued lizard. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Really? Wow.
No. A few snakes, but they come out during the summertime. I think it was when I found under a cupboard under the carport.
Fact or fiction? You know what else is interesting too? American people have been led to believe that 100% of the snakes in Australia are venomous. Is that true, or is that just a fictional thing? Is that accurate?
No, that's just fiction. No,
that's kind of what I. That's kind of what I thought. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, not all, but
many of them.
I mean, they do have some. Many of them are, but not all.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. If you don't bother a snake, it's not going to bother you. So,
well, I love snakes. Yeah, they're great. They're great. Yeah.
I'm terrified of snakes.
Well, Tony, let me help you out, mate. Let me tell you. Think about it this way, Tony. If you're afraid of snakes, think about how scary it would be if there were too many mice transmitting all the horrible diseases that mice give us. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
I'm not a fan
that's
of
the
them
thing.
either.
Well, the interesting thing is the creature that poses a greater threat to people immediately are mice. Mice are far more dangerous than
Yeah.
snakes. So I'm way
Oh
more
yeah.
concerned with no mice and yes snakes. I don't know if that's just me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. No, I could deal with snakes because, as I said, they don't bother you unless you bother them, and that.
right.
So
Well, Tony, I gotta tell you, this has been an absolutely splendid episode. I knew it would be. I knew you would deliver, and I knew I was going to love every word that came out of your mouth. Really did. But of course, I'm sure that before we go over to the phones here in the audience, I'm sure you want to ask me only one question to really make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster. What do you want to know about me?
gee, I tell you what, I didn't even think about that.
Well,
One
I
thing I
did.
do want
I thought
to,
of it.
yeah, one thing I want to know is, and I mean, we've spoken, and I know what basically, what your mantra is, what you want to do, but what made you go into podcasting more than because more than another avenue and try and do it? Is it because of the fact that you can reach more people this way rather than doing it at one-on-one scenarios and things like
Mm-hmm.
that?
Well, what was going on was during the pandemic. Um, when the pandemic started, my guide dog was in the last year of her life. She was retired. She was very elderly, and I was sitting at home, just like I do now, doing my teaching work. And when I wasn't teaching Tony, I was listening to a lot of podcasts around the blindness community. One of them is the podcast, the person who I said I'll name drop it privately about who it was. Anyway, though, I was listening to many podcasts around the community, and I found that many of these podcasts, although they're geared towards and marketed towards a blind audience, are not really accepting of my opinions. They're too strict, too uptight, not open to guests. I have a problem with that. And I can't shut up. And I love educating people and love getting behind this microphone. So I thought, well, why don't I just push record and start recording myself and see where it goes. Well, what I would do is I would go to various Facebook groups, and people ask the silliest questions or the best questions or the weirdest questions, and I would answer them. And I would say, "Hey, Tony," I would actually give you an audio file message. "Hi, Tony. Thanks for asking your question about goalball in the United States. Well, I'm not an expert, but here's what I know." And then I would answer the question. And then over time, it occurred to me that's like a podcast because I'm delivering audio content to an audience. And it just sort of occurred to me. But I've been totally enthralled by audio material ever since I was born. I grew up in a time period where audio and terrestrial radio was at an all-time high in the 1990s. So that's why I created Aaron's Opinion, basically to help Tony talk about what you want to talk about and have a great time doing it. And that's what we do.
Fantastic. That to me is a huge plus, and I agree with you in relation to. I think with a lot of particularly Facebook groups, they really don't like people to have an opinion unless it's the normal one. You can't
I
have an
am
opinion
so
that's
I am
not
so fed up with that
there.
too, or even Discord too, where if someone doesn't
Yep.
like you in a voice channel, they just kick you out. Yeah, people are getting more sensitive on social. I've noticed that they're getting a lot more sensitive and things like that. Well, before we go, just want to say, would you like to talk to our two great friends in the audience? We have Latabo from South Africa, or we have Aaron also from the States. Do you want to talk to either one of them? I know they have questions.
Yeah, more than happy to.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, more
good.
than
Just
happy
wanted
to.
wanted to make sure you were fine with it. Wanted to make sure you had another minute or so to be able
Yep.
to get into it. So let's see.
Entering scroll area. Type message here. Message
Let's see here.
Participant list. In participant for the pin. Young asked to unmute.
Going over to South Africa first. Absolutely. Young Lion, go. One question from South Africa.
Okay, well, good morning, guys. Morning over here. Well, oh gosh, and well, okay. Let me just get into the topic. Okay, because I heard that you guys were talking about radio and um as well as like breakfast shows, because obviously like I think I've done that for several months, and then I took a break, then I'm coming back to radio again. But I want to ask um our guest here, um like, okay, how is it like to be a radio broadcaster or a radio presenter? Either way.
Yeah, good question, mate. I tell you what, to me it's the greatest thing ever, because you get to share your joy with other people out there, and to me, you be it through music or what you say, through comments that you receive. I absolutely love it. I mean, I could go out until 1 o'clock in the morning, which I've done before, and then get up at 4:30 to make sure I'm down at the station to do my show the next morning. I love it that much, because it's great, because you get to share, you get to go into people's homes and bring them joy. Now, there's a lot of listeners down where I am that are elderly, don't get out, and the amount of feedback I get through the station at how much you brighten up their morning just by saying it over them, by going into their world and spending time with them, even though it's over the airways. It's one of the greatest feelings I get.
Okay. Well, actually, let me just it's just a follow-up question. This is my last question. Okay, since you said like you wake up, like you would like do like radio stuff till like 1 a.m. in the morning. Well, that's interesting. Well, I've never done that, like literally since I've started broadcasting since back in 2022. So for me, I would say like, okay, like the question is like like what shows did you do, or what advice would you give a person who's still starting to be a radio broadcaster?
To be themselves. Don't try and model yourself on anybody else. Be yourself. Always speak from the heart, in relation to what you're saying. Because if you don't believe something that you're telling somebody, then people who are listening aren't going to believe it. So, yeah, most important piece of advice I can give to somebody if they want to get involved: be themselves and be confident. They're the keys to being successful, I think.
Great questions and great answer. Absolutely. All right. Well, Latabo, you'll definitely connect. Yes, go. Yes,
No, I was saying thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah.
My
And
pleasure.
in just a few moments, a little later, I'll send him over to to our WhatsApp group. I'm sure you'll keep the conversation going over there. All right. Okay, one more.
Well, Aaron, before so sorry to cut you. Also, actually, just to announce that it's my birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. But that I'll mention it. I'll mention that on WhatsApp. Don't worry, guys.
All right, Latabo. Thank you so much. And now one more, Aaron Kolanowski. He's a fellow podcaster, like us, Tony. All right, go. Your one question, Aaron. Go.
So I was kind of wondering, like in what ways is radio done differently in Australia than compared to like the rest of the world and whatnot?
Look, I can't answer that because I don't know what it's done like in the rest of the world, but I would imagine it's just pretty similar. I know that basically over here, we've just got our studio set up with our, obviously, computers and song lists and mixer. Probably we're a little bit more liberal in what we're allowed to say. We can get away with a little bit more than, we're not as politically correct, I think, as you are in the States, and in particular, but also I know that in other parts of the world as well, we can get away with saying a little bit more, and by giving our opinions on things than what can be said in a lot of other countries. I think that's probably the main difference. And I think probably Australians tend to be a lot more laid back. And this goes from the broadcasters who are professionals to my level and all the way. And that, so it's like we're a lot more relaxed in the way that we approach things. And I think that's probably one of the major differences.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wonderful. I just wanted to take this time and say, as I always do, Latabo, thanks so much for staying up all the way in South Africa. Thanks for staying up late. Aaron, thank you for joining us. Tony, if someone wants to get in touch with you after they hear this great episode, how can you be reached? How do they get in touch with Tony?
Just search for me on Facebook at under Tony Telfer, TELF for Fred ER, and you'll find it. I'm the one that's in Young. Otherwise, if they want to, Aaron, they can get in touch with you, no doubt, and I'm more than happy for you to pass on my details to them.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And that was a great episode. And that's going to be all wonderful. Thanks so much. From my heart to yours, thanks for getting up all the way over there in Australia. Thanks for joining us today. And wonderful conversation that we'll all learn from. So wonderful. All right. We'll see you guys next time. As we like to say here on Aaron's Opinion, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. For those of you who are still surviving on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, comment below, tickle the bell notification to know when we go live next right here on YouTube. All right, everybody. That was Tony Telfer. Thank you so much, everybody. We will certainly be back soon. And thanks so much. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.